Welcome back. Do you ever have one of those chess games where during the game you felt like it was a very tight back and forth strategic and or tactical battle that you just barely pulled out or you barely let it slip away, but then later when you run the game report or analyze with Stockfish, you find out that there were blunders and mistakes left and right? That was kind of the case with this game last night. When I was playing on the app, and when I ran the game review or game report afterward, it said I had 8 great moves. But then as I scrolled up, it said I had 9 blunders. Fortunately, when I ran the same game report or game review on the website, it was only 6 great moves, but it was only 8 blunders. So they went down a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to take you through those blunders as I try to figure out what I did wrong. Let's just get right to it. I've cheated and I went through the game report list and I looked at which moves that were blunders, and I'm just going to scroll to those moves and then try to figure out what I did wrong without looking at Stockfish, or what I should have done instead. So here we go. Okay, here we are at the point of my first blunder, which again, I have made a note of beforehand. I made a little list that I'm kind of cheat sheeting off of, but I didn't write down what I should have done. I'm going to try to figure that out here. What I played was taking that pawn. I thought that was fairly obvious, but maybe I should have let them take my pawn and then taken it back. And then I guess I could have, no, that would have been bad. I don't know what I could have done after that. Maybe I should I have played knight to e7 to directly challenge this knight? Because I'm already in a little bit of a pickle over here. I was about to get forked here and I had to move this rook over. And I have my knight guarding that spot and my rook, but this pawn is maybe what my opponent should have taken over there, my A pawn, but they didn't. That would have threatened my rook and I would have had to have done something with my rook. I thought if they did that, I would have taken this pawn, but they moved it instead. Should I have let them take and put this here instead? Or, okay, what about bishop to c5? I'm going to say it was either knight to e2 or bishop to c5. That would have added a layer of protection to my d pawn. Well, they have 2 pieces attacking it as well. I'm kind of leaning toward bishop to c5. That would have developed a piece, helped protect that pawn, and then I don't know what I would have done after that, but that's what we're going to go. I'm going to click the lines. It was rook to c5. Would have forked the knights. Okay, and then one of the knights would have had to go somewhere. And so then if they took this pawn down on the a file, I would have gotten the other knight. Oh, I just would have won a knight, basically. No, because they would have moved their pawn forward, it says. It says they would have played c4. Oh, and then I could have just taken the pawn. Oh, okay. Well, I learned something. Why didn't I think of that? Because I still would have been protecting the square from there that I was protecting from back here. That makes sense. Rook to d8 was my next best move, but I think they still would have played c4 either way. I'm going to turn off the lines, and I'm going to go to where the next move was. Oh, you know what? It was the next move. Okay, after I took that, which was my blunder, and they took back, my next move was a blunder. And what I played here was what I had thought of the previous turn, which was bishop to c5. Okay, that's bad, according to the game report. So I'm guessing, again, it was this. That seems obvious now that it showed me that on the previous move. So I'm going to turn on the lines and say it was rook to c5. It was. It was the only move that maintained equality here. But instead, I played bishop to c5, which gave my opponent a 1.5 advantage. I don't know what my idea was here. I guess it was just to continue developing, and then I figured I would put this here, and so forth. Okay, turn off the lines. I got that one right, but only because the previous move, the lines had said rook to c5. The next one was where? It was here. Now what I did here was I captured that knight. My idea was, what was my idea? Oh, you know what my idea was that they would take with this pawn and it would split their pawn structure, but that ignores the fact that they can take with their bishop. That helps them develop a piece. It points another attacker down here. So I should have done something else instead. Should I have pulled this knight back now that this pawn is protected by the bishop? I could have pulled this knight back to kind of get that knight out of there, because where would that knight have gone? Back here? Yeah, that's probably it. Or castle. I'm going to guess it was either castling or knight to c7. Let's turn on the lines. Knight to c7. Okay, I feel good about that. Yeah, because now that my bishop is here, it is protecting this pawn that knight is after. And this would either force the knight trade, which if they took, I would take back. And it says that's what they would do. They would just trade off that knight rather than moving it back here where I could trade it off and force the damaging of the pawn structure. Okay, turn off the lines. And the next one was a little while. I'll speed this up in editing. Okay, we've reached the point of my next blunder, which if you're counting, this is my fourth one. Okay, and what I played here was knight captures c1. And in hindsight, I should have taken the other rook. Okay, I haven't turned on the lines, obviously, you've been watching, but yeah, I think I should have taken that. And this was my, why I think that, because that would have drawn this rook over here, the c-file rook, over to take my knight back, because my opponent had gone up in exchange, as you saw during the last portion. But here I could have gone back up the exchange and got that rook off the c-file. Then I could have taken this pawn. If they took back, I would have taken here, and I would have gained a pawn. But instead, I took this rook. So I did go back up the exchange, but they still had a rook behind that pawn. Okay, let's turn on the lines and see if it was just taking the wrong, instead of knight captures c1, it should have been knight captures e1. Yeah, okay, and that was it. And that was my third best move to capture that. Second would have been this. Well, let's turn off the lines and we'll go to my next blunder, which is 20 moves from here. Again, I will speed that up in editing. Okay, here is the point of my next blunder. Okay, now what I played was rook to g3 check, and my idea was that when they moved out of check, I would take this pawn, because that would even me up on material. Right now, my opponent is still one pawn up on material. They do have this bishop, but they've been finding out that having an extra piece isn't as good sometimes as having a bunch of extra pawns. And I was slowly, steadily working my way down there. So yeah, that was why I did that, in order to take this pawn. But now it's saying I should have done something different, and oh, I could have just taken the pawn with my king. Oh my. Okay, I bet that's it. I should have just taken the pawn with my king. No. Oh, okay, that was my second best move. I would have maintained an advantage had I taken that pawn with my king. It would have been -7. But e2 would have been even better, because the king can't get over there to stop that pawn because my rook is cutting off those squares. So they would have had to, if I played e2, they would play bishop d4 check, and it says bishop d4 check. Oh, it would be check this way. But I would still have a -12 advantage, even if they did that, because I would take the pawn, and then what are they going to do? Oh, they're going to go down here to protect that pawn? But then I would check. Wouldn't they just take it? That seems really complicated. I think going back to here, I think I would go with the second best move. Here. Okay, Stockfish is now saying it's my third best move to capture that pawn, but I still would have maintained an advantage. But what I played instead was this, which takes away almost completely all my advantage, even though it still picks up this extra pawn. But the problem is it does leave me with this discovered check, even after I take the pawn. Okay, I get that. So back here, okay, and again, it's saying it's my second best move to do this, or okay, third best move. It's not sure. But yeah, that's what I should do in hindsight. I had plenty of time left here. I had 5 minutes on my 10-minute clock, no increment. My opponent was down to 2.5 by this point. Oh, well, do you see that? It says my second best move and my third best move is capturing that pawn. That's confusing. Okay, well, I would have picked either my second best move, which was capturing this pawn, or my third best move, which is capturing that pawn. Okay, in hindsight, if I had it to do over again. Let's turn off the lines. I will take you to my next blunder. And here we are at my next blunder. Now here, I did play e2. What I failed to account for is that they're about to put me in check by moving the bishop, and from there they would be, excuse me, from there they would be guarding the promotion square. So what should I have played instead? I am going to guess I should have moved my king up now. King to g4. Okay, let's turn on the lines. Yes, king to g4 would have maintained equality. King to g6 also would have maintained equality. Or king to h4. Any of those three moves would have maintained equality, but apparently I gave away what a quality I had by playing that. And that, oh wow, that gave them plus 50, plus 49. And they did not play the best move. Okay, I see it now. What they should have played was here. That would have put me in check, and it would have won the rook for free and guarded the promotion square. Now here they're down to 2 minutes, and I still have almost 5. I think before I moved that pawn, they were already planning on going here for that check to guard the promotion square. Because from here, this wouldn't make any sense if the e-pawn is still there because they're not attacking the rook. I think maybe it took them by surprise that I moved that pawn and they didn't realize that a new attack had become available from here. I think that's what it was. So they didn't play their best move after I pushed the e-pawn. But yeah, my best move here would have been just getting off of the same rank as that rook. Okay, well, I got that. Turn off the lines, go to the next blunder. I only had one more. Okay, we have reached the point of my very final blunder. As you saw earlier when my opponent moved their bishop out of the way to check me with their rook, that they didn't go to the right place where they could have won my rook at that point. And as I said, I think it was because they didn't take into account I had just moved the e-pawn out of the way of that attack. And because they went here instead, that gave me the advantage back, which I have still. But apparently my next move gave away that advantage. Now, I remember thinking here that I'm very close to promoting. I didn't know if I knew I had been down earlier. No stockfish needed. I knew I had been down, but I was pretty sure I'd clawed my way back to at least equality. I thought I had chances here. I didn't realize it was minus 49. And those chances revolve around these pawns, getting one of them to the final phase down there. So what I thought here was I need my king to help out. It can't be sacrificing here, right? Because then they would take. If I moved this pawn forward, they would just take that with their king and their rook would be blocking the other one. So that I didn't consider this, and I don't think that's the answer here. What I did consider was getting my king down there to help. Now, at this current moment, my rear pawn is guarding my forward pawn. My f pawn is guarding my e pawn right now, and my rook is guarding my f pawn, and my e pawn is guarding my rook. So I did notice that all three of those pieces, they're protecting each other in a little circle. So I didn't need my king protecting this just yet. But I did want my king protecting that eventually. But I wanted it protecting it from up here someplace. And I can't get there by going this way because their bishop's cutting off that diagonal. So my idea was, what if I went here? And then I would still be protecting this pawn, but I would be closer. That was my plan. That was counted as a blunder according to the engine. So the only thing, I don't think it's moving this pawn forward because that gives up this one, right? If I move the f pawn forward, the rook is still protecting it, and this is still protecting the rook, but then nothing's protecting the e pawn anymore. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it's the sacrifice. And now, because it was counted as a blunder, I know it's not king to h3, and I can't possibly move to those two squares or that one because of where their king and bishop are. So that leaves either moving the rook back, which I don't think is good, or here, which I know is not good, or moving the a pawn. So was it a3? I'm going to turn on the lines and guess it was a3. It was f2. Really? f2, okay, a3 is my second best move. It maintains a pretty strong advantage of -9. Oh, because right now they can just win. Well, no, because I moved here. That's okay. I remember now. That was another reason I moved there, because I thought they could check me and win that pawn. That's my best move. And it says if I did that, they wouldn't take. They would go here and check me, and then I would go there. And that doesn't make sense. I'm positive if I moved the f pawn forward, they would take this pawn. Right? Oh, but then I would have a mating sequence. Oh, because then I would take here? Really? And then they would take there? Oh, because now if they took the pawn, I would get their rook. And if they take the rook, then I would promote. Wait. And I would go here, and let's say it doesn't matter what I promote to, they're going to take it. Oh, no, it says if I promoted to a rook, they wouldn't take it? It says it wouldn't matter if they took it. Because they can't get to this pawn in time. Oh, yeah, they can't get to that pawn in time. Okay. All right, well, going back here. So that's what I should have played. And it says if I had played that, they would have known better than to take this pawn. However, I think any opponent I've played would have taken that pawn. But then I would have promoted or taken. Doesn't matter. I have a mating sequence. Wow. Okay. Well, then maybe I should have played f2. I just didn't think that far. But it says they wouldn't have taken it. They would have played here. Okay. Well, I played there instead, and it says that takes us back to equality. Okay, well, I thought I played a pretty smart endgame, and apparently I did in places, but not enough. Okay, now, then my opponent gave everything away here by playing that, because they thought, this is all locked up. I can't promote, so they're going to go after this pawn. Okay, now here, I'm going to leave the lines on because I don't have any more blunders listed on my little cheat sheet. So here I did play one of my 2 best moves, which was the whole plan. I already told you one of my plans was to get this king in here, where I can not only protect this pawn there, but I can protect that pawn after it moves forward, which I thought was a pretty good plan. And it worked because my opponent messed up. They didn't do what they should have done, okay? Because once I played that, what they should have done, instead of moving that rook over, they should have played rook to b6. And then I would have moved this pawn, and then they would have gotten in front of it, and we would have been locked up. But they didn't. They played that, which allowed me to go ahead with my plan. And now I can push this pawn forward. If they take with the bishop, I'll take with the rook, and so on. So they took my A pawn. I took the bishop. There's not much they can do now. And at this point, I played there, and my opponent ran out of time. I had mate in 1 because they only have 1 legal move, and I was going to checkmate them in the corner. Okay, so it worked out well for me, but you saw how many blunders I had. 8 of them, 8 blunders. But I would say I've lost track, but I think at least half of them, now that I know they were blunders, at least half of them, looking at that position, I did figure out which move I should have made. Now I'm going to go look at the 6 great moves. I don't have the app in front of me right now on the Android tablet, so I don't know what the 8 great moves were according to that evaluation, but I do have 6 great moves here. I'm just going to take you back to those. Okay, in this position, back here on move 31, when my opponent pushed this pawn forward, the next move that I made was a great move according to this to the evaluation. This is where I forked the rooks, I think. Is that what I did next? Yeah. And it called that a great move. I didn't think it was that great. That's why I had moved the knight over there in the first place. If we back up just a couple of moves, I had brought this knight over here to help protect this pawn, which they're attacking from 2 different directions. But I also saw that square was sitting there waiting for me to get to it pretty easily here. And so that's why when they did that, I realized that if they took, I could take with either one of these pawn or the knight. So I thought, well, what's it going to hurt to put that knight over there? And so I did that. And here it says they should have moved one of their rooks, either rook to c3 or rook e to d1, and that would have avoided the fork. But they didn't. Instead, they played as we saw, g4. And so then to me, I'm not going to count that as great, even though Stockfish did. It's counting it as great because, as you see on the lines there at the upper right, it's the only move that's not a blunder. And a lot of times that's how moves are counted as great at my level. The only move that's not a blunder. Anything else would have given my opponent a huge advantage. So that's what it counted as great, was forking the rooks. Okay, and then you saw I took the wrong one. So let's go on to my next great move, which was move 41. I'm going to go here, where my opponent has just taken the rear end of my pawns. It looks like they're just going to take the rest of them. So I have to protect the back one, because if I can protect the back one, they can't get the others. So I moved my king over, and it counted that as a great move. To me, it seemed like the very obvious move. I didn't want to move this rook back, and the reason that I chose the king move to protect the pawn was because I wanted to start advancing these pawns. And if I moved my rook back to a5, it would block the advancement of my own pawns. Then my next great move was just a few moves after this, which was on move 45, so I'm just going to skip to there. And I did give some consideration. I remember giving some consideration to this move. I had multiple options to get out of check. I had g6, I had here, right here, and here. As you see, only one of them maintains equality here. Well, I chose that one because if I chose any of the others, they were going to get this pawn. That was the whole reason I put my king there in the first place. Okay, so what we're learning here is that when it says great move, once again, it's sometimes just the obvious move or the only move. And that was the case here. Okay, let's go to the next one, which was on move 48. Okay, at this point, they have moved over to stop the advance of this pawn. I can't move it forward now because then they could take it. And I can't move my rook forward to guard that spot because then they would take it. But I can protect it and let my rook go by moving this pawn forward. And as you can see, it's the only move that doesn't give my opponent an advantage. So in this case, this one was also an only move, and it counted as great. Okay, the next one was 10 moves later on move 58. So let's go there. This is where, okay, this is where they had just moved the bishop out of the way for a discovered check, and I went forward to continue protecting the pawns, right? Yeah. Okay, that was the only move that maintains -6. Any other move would have been a blunder. Okay, so my other moves were these three. I don't know why I would have even considered any of those. The dark, these two dark squares over here are squares that their bishop could attack. For example, if I'd moved to h4, I think they just would have gone down there. If I had moved to h6, they might have gone here. I don't know, but it just seemed obvious to me to keep going to protect that pawn, so that's what I did. And that was counted as a great move. All right, my next one, my last great move was 4 moves later, and that was counted as a great move. Wait, it says this is better though, but it counted, the game review counted king to G2, which is what I played, as a great move. Okay, so Stockfish clearly here is running at a greater depth than the game review, if it thought that was a great move. Because clearly Stockfish prefers F2 here, which I didn't play. That was counted as a great move. But, I mean, it maintained a huge advantage on my part. It was, as you saw, one of only 2 moves that maintained that huge advantage. Okay, so we've learned a couple things. When you sometimes think you've played a great strategic and tactical battle, you later find out that you had lots of blunders. We learned that. I also learned that once I know where the blunders are, at least half the time, if not more, I'm able to figure out what the best move should have been. Once I look at the board and say, okay, this move here was a blunder. You did this, that was wrong. Look around the board and find something better. Most of the time, I was finding the better move. And the last thing we learned, once again, is that when it says a move is great or brilliant, sometimes it's the only move. And that was the case in almost all of these. Now here, it wasn't the only move. This last one is an exception because F2 would have actually been slightly better, but this was the only other move that didn't take us back to -14 or so, which is still a huge advantage. Like playing A3, I still would have been up -14. Wouldn't they have just taken it? It says they wouldn't. That's weird. I think they would have taken it. It says it doesn't matter. They can play king to F4. They can move the rook here to block that pawn, or they could take it. And either way, rook to A2 is their best move, but either way, I still have a big advantage. So that last one, definitely, I don't think it should have counted as great, but it did. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.